Hello, everybody. This is Madam Onça, hardest working woman in show business, and I made the art for the World Spirit Tarot and wrote this book with my friend Jessica Juca Godino. So this is the next next edition of our quarantine series of Witchy 101 Tarot Basics. Today was supposed to be the day where we were going to do the people cards, but I realized it's totally April Fool's Day and we need to do the major arcana. So April Fools, we're switching to cover the majors today. For anybody who doesn't know what we've been up to, we have walked together, mostly on Facebook Live, although we have had to experiment with different platforms because the entire planet is trying to live their life online right now. And we have done a couple overviews of basic tarot history, structure, tradition, etc. You have had a generous amount of referrals to Mary K. Greer, Rachel Pollack, and other tarot scholars. And then we did individual sessions that you can find here on the World Spirit Tarot Facebook page. They're also on YouTube, but you can find those if you'd like to watch the sessions that we've already recorded, talking about the ace through tens of the four suits, those being, of course, swords, wands, cups, pentacles. And so today, as I said, we're going to take a walk through the major arcana. So if you're a note-taking kind of person, you may want to take some notes. If you are a card-having kind of person, you may choose to get those cards out now, and that's going to be, depending on the deck you have, something like the Fool to the Universe. In most decks, they are numbered 0 through 21. There are 22 of the major arcana. So if you're so inclined, get those cards out now, and I will do my best to take us all through it expediently. That being said, the study of the tarot is giant, and there are, of course, folks such as the eminent scholars I just mentioned who have literally spent a lifetime deepening our understanding, not only of these as a fascinating window into ourselves, as a tool for self-knowledge or divination if you go into that sort of thing, but also as a lens through which to witness history, both the history of peoples, of religion, of folklore, of feminism. So there's a ton that can be studied there, in addition to just the brass tacks of what these images mean. Today, as we walk through the major arcana, we are going to be looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which is a classic, probably the best known deck of this century, and then I will use the art from my own deck, which is the World Spirit Tarot, which is very much a Rider-Waite family member. Sometimes they're called clones, although I have to say my art is very different in its execution, although I like to think it is similar in spirit to a traditional deck. It was important to me in the making of a deck, and I hope for you as you go to seek a deck, whether it's Pamela Coleman Smith's deck, the Rider-Waite deck, or mine, or whatever deck you decide that you want to work with, I hope that you look for something that with an emphasis on representation, meaning that it gives you a window into considering the existence of and the experience of people different than yourself. So people of different colors, classes, body types, etc., gender expression. But you do you. Maybe you've got a deck in your hand that you just love. So whatever you got now, lay it out. So arcana in this context is a word that means secret. And we have the major arcana and the minor arcana. The minor arcana, that is all of those other ones that we've already spent some time with, the pips, the ace through tens, in those four suits. And for those of you who are just arriving, you may notice that those four suits are analogous. In fact, they are the same as the ones in the playing cards. So we've got those. The other ones, the major arcana, those are the big ones. They're the heavy hitters that make it into the movie scripts. Arcana, again, is a word that means secret. Hilarious to me because my kid's last name is actually Arcane. And nobody ever knows that that's a word, let alone that it means anything. It astounds me. Anyone outside the tarot world doesn't really seem to catch on to that. It's their actual name. So we're going to spend some time with these. Let's get to it because I've already been talking for 4 minutes. The major arcana can be understood as the fool's journey. One way to look at it, as for your matter of personal study, lay them out as you would in a bit of a grid from ace from Fool through all the numbers all the way up to your universe, world, whatever that last sort of finishing card is called. And notice, it's essentially a graphic novel. It describes in comic book form, hieroglyphic form, as it were, the journey of the individual as they come to grips with self, otherness, society, moral dilemmas, the challenges and ethics of the flesh, conflict, tragedy, and ultimately comes to resolution and begins that whole cycle again. So you could spend some good study time just walking through that notion. But today, here is Pamela Coleman Smith's version of The Fool. Here's my little teeny tiny Rider-Waite deck. I apologize that the words are backwards. Maybe they'll be better for you. But here we see the Fool, opulent, decadent, devil-may-care, with their little bundle over their shoulder, their bindlestiff, as it were, I believe it's called, and their little dog, and they're about to step off a cliff without any concern. Not only are they not concerned, but everything about the image suggests that this decision, this attitude of adventure is supported by the universe. So there we see that. Here's my version of the same thing. Again, in the spirit of inclusivity, I could think of no reason in the world why it had to be a guy or a skinny person. I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity for all shapes of folk to rock out with our major arcana. So again, we see the Fool, and she's stepping off a roof instead of stepping off a cliff. And while the dog is sort of tugging at her, saying, just think about what you're doing, all of the many birds around her are sort of joyfully suggesting that she will be magically well supported. So when the Fool card comes up, what we see in reading is generally it's a time to take what look like risks. It's a time to step boldly into the unknown. It is a time to proceed in a state of joy and wonder. And if you are a person who is prone to anxiety or misapprehension, this is a good time to let some of that go and let the wonder happen to you. So there's our Fool. Then we come to the Magician, classic figure. He's got the arms that say, as above, so below. In fact, he's over here too, on this box. He also has before him on this table the symbols of all the elements that represent each of the suits. Everything about him speaks to mastery, confidence, competence, capability, and the presence of a representation of each of the other suits suggests that he has cultivated a versatility and a mastery of all the different areas that they speak to. In other words, he has found a livable balance between activities to do with career, activities to do with a rich emotional and creative life, capability in the area of decision-making, boundaries, career, ambition. It's all about finding a sort of perfect mix. And that is a constant theme I find in the tarot, is this notion of finding a balance. Here's my Magician card. Those of you that know me will recognize that this is actually a real life person, somebody that we know. And here we see that they're actually juggling the elements of the suit rather than just surveying them on a table. And this is definitely intended to bring in aspects of various cultures. So there we see that. Once again, competence, capability, confidence, all the good stuff. Now we're going to step into the mysterious realm of the High Priestess. Now, long ago when I first learned about these cards, I was like, what is with the J, not the B? And there was, I just thought it was Ben & Jerry's, which was a kind of ice cream that had been invented at the time where I was first learning about the cards. And I was like, oh, pomegranate ice cream. Thanks, Ben & Jerry's. Of course, if you're interested in that sort of thing, they actually stand for Boaz and Jacqueline. I don't know if I'm pronouncing them properly, but it speaks to some very deep old symbolism. The veil behind her and the pomegranates of the moon, all of those things are to suggest that the High Priestess, she is intuition, she is mystery, she is very much about turning inward and listening to and honoring that inner voice. Everything about our society as it currently exists is designed to elevate logic and logic and cognition, and yet at the same time, venal, a lot of venal emotionalism. We need to work on that as a society. She suggests that it is time to lean into your intuition, be the veil between the worlds, feel that the earth is alive under our feet, and that the heavens have a life around us. So I wanted that same feeling that is engendered in that other card, but I wanted to put her outdoors, outside the realm of mere humanity and back into nature. So there's your High Priestess. Speaking of ladies of power, we find now, here's the Empress, if you can see her. Clearly, with that sort of heart-shaped pillow or cushion and the symbol of Venus, everything about her here is to sort of speak to a bit more of the less the intuitive, less the mystery, and more the sort of in the flesh aspects of Mother Earth and femininity. So the Empress, everything about her is, she's like the Earth Mother, the Earth Goddess. As I always say, these archetypes are not strictly gendered, in my opinion, so someone can be experiencing the qualities, the power, the life force, the archetype of the Empress without it being about whether they're male or female or so forth. Here's my Empress. Again, I wanted it to speak to this notion of being at ease in your skin. Everything about it is decadent. There's avocados and a divan and a gushy, luscious waterfall in the background. This tree, it's a Paulownia tree. Technically, it's called a princess tree, but I thought I would think of it as an Empress tree. It has a very heavy, fruity smell. So everything about the Empress, when she comes up, speaks to being confident, comfortable, and carnal. Now, it is again, there's something to it of like the Mother Earth, or that sort of abundant life force. If that is the mother, this is the father. Here we see the Emperor. Everything about him is sort of very structured, armored, sort of angular, square, strong, powerful, elevated. He's not down in the landscape. He is mostly up above it. Let's try to get the glare off. That imperial purple. So the Emperor card comes up. It is everything that is best and worst about society. It is roads, it is highways, it is libraries that are open, it is 911 that functions, but at its worst, it is dogmatism, fascism, dictatorships. It is structure at its best and worst. Here's my version of it. Once again, he has that broad picture. He is overseeing the activities of the town. And here again, you can see a reference to all the elements of the suits. He sees everything at his best. He helps to direct, protect, husband in the traditional sense, to steward. At its worst, it can be significant daddy issues and a resistance to authority. Sometimes resistance to authority is the appropriate response, like when authority is unjust. Then we go from there to the Hierophant. If the Emperor speaks largely to authority in this world, worldly authority, the Hierophant, of course, it's an image basically of a papal figure. Again, it's very hierarchical. You can see the people sort of genuflecting. There's the gravitas of tradition behind them. Again, they are speaking to that sense of something mighty and divine embodied. Here's my version. Again, I wanted this to be same thing. I mean, these people they are not just genuflecting, they are supine. He's got a torch to suggest that he genuinely has some light to cast, if you don't mind supplicating yourself at the feet of this knowledge. The Hierophant, in my experience, often comes up when it's time to dig into structured learning. So it can be going back to grad school. It can literally be, joining the ministry or something, but it is most often somehow immersing yourself in deep hierarchical cultural traditions, literally learning at the feet of someone else, in the realm of certifications and institutions and so forth. So the Hierophant is very much about being willing to play that game in a systemic way as compared to like a one-on-one learning kind of way. Before I forget and get any further along, should you choose to tip me, of course it's 100% backwards in this video. This is my handy dandy homemade sign. That is futureoftradition@gmail.com. And then my husband's Venmo, which is Paolo Garbanzo. I tried to set up my personal Venmo today, and Venmo was having drama, and there's nobody in the office because of COVID-19, so we're just going to have to muddle on. So if you want to tip me, go ahead and do that. If you want to buy cards, you can get in touch with me. As long as we still have a post office, I can send you a tarot deck. And if you just need to enjoy, because life is hard enough right now, you just sit back and learn something. Have some fun. Here we come to the Lovers. This is Pamela Coleman Smith's version. She did make her art, the major arcana she made very much to suit the illustrative request of the person who hired her, who was a occultist of that time period. Interestingly, like a Roman Catholic occultist named A.E. Waite. So I assume that accounts for the very sort of Adam and Eve-ness in the background here with the snake and the tree on fire and the angels. What this card meant back in the day, sometimes it was an image of Castor and Pollux, and it refers to the twins, which is a great indicator that while it is definitely about love, relationships, and connectivity, it's not always about romantic love. We tend to go, oh, the Lover's card, but it is a card that can refer to a bigger, broader love than merely a carnal love, merely a love like a romance type of situation. It speaks to all of the forms of love and balance. This is my version. Again, I wanted representation. I wanted to get it into an LGBTQ friendly spectrum. And we do see here, we've got Pan and Kuan Yin up in the background, rather than the angel that is in the original. They speak to passion and compassion, trying to find a balance between all of the things it might take to make us care enough to work hard enough to maintain relationships with friends, families, lovers, and others. So, the Lover's card. When it comes up, it's generally auspicious in whatever relationship you're talking about. And here we see the Chariot. My teacher, Kate Nordstrom, used to say that this is the card of all dressed up and not quite sure where to go. I always picture, you can see there's these sort of sphinx figures in front of this chariot. I always picture the charioteer is in the driveway. The creatures are revving up, but they have their foot simultaneously on the gas and on the brakes. So when this card comes up, in a reading generally, I would say that you are assured of a success and a good result. It's just a matter of getting all of that creative sort of chimera energy, getting those horses or zebroid, reverse mermaids, whatever, getting those creatures pointing more or less in the same direction and giving them their head so that you can tear off at pace and achieve everything you're capable of. The Chariot. Here's the Strength card. We see the figure, we see the lion. I've seen some old decks where this is a picture of, basically a picture of Hercules as like tearing the lion's head apart, pulling its jaws open. I'm not sure. If I've read it, I've forgotten. There's a point in history, I'm sure, when it switched from being that very dominating image of strength to this, which is much more of it's almost more like the lion and the mouse with the splinter. It's much more of a gentle sense of strength. So this is less power over and more power within. It's more of a co-arising, like inner strength that begets outer surety, that begets positive result. This card definitely has, astrologically, Leo has a role to play. You can see that in mine, these folks wandered over from the Lover's card, that image. And back here we see that Lemnis get that figure overhead that also appears in a few of the other cards, including the Magician and the traditional deck. When the Strength card comes up, it speaks to you leaning into your inner strength in order to create your desired outcome, not so much dominating others. And now we come to the card, the Hermit. So here it is, the figure with their starry lantern. Here's my version. Once again, a figure with a starry lantern. This card comes up to speak to us about following an if the Hierophant is prostrating yourself at the feet of traditional and institutionalized knowledge and information, I feel the Hermit comes up much more often when it's suggesting that you tune inward and find your own way. And in finding your own way, you may find that you become a lantern, a leader for others who are likewise on a quest. It definitely suggests that if you are in a conflict situation, that you find a way to withdraw and sort of fortify your own borders, and don't hide your light under a bushel. Take your light and go over there. So there's our Hermit card. And now we see Wheel of Fortune. This card speaks of a reversal of fortune. So whatever you're experiencing now, you may be about to experience the reverse. So should you find yourself wherever you are, as it goes up, it comes down. I don't find it's usually it's not a harbinger of ill, but it does, we're all a little bit afraid of what is unknown to us. It's like the magic 8-ball. Sometimes when this card comes up in a reading, it literally means that there are things that you cannot yet know, you cannot yet decipher from a situation. So it's a little bit of an ask again later card. And again, it does speak to that notion of if you're in the down now, you're going to be going to the up high. And if you're up here, you may be going to the down under. So be prepared for radical change. Here's the Justice card. Very stately, almost very, very stately, very institutional in the sense of like everything about the frame is sort of very structured. This card comes up a lot when we are, number one, it usually means the positive outcome for some sort of legal matter. Like if if you're a person who's been waiting for your green card, you may be about to get it. You've been waiting for a custody thing to be settled. It's about to be settled. So it has a very practical application, but of course it all speaks to the notion of justice. Like what are you willing to advocate for? How would you like to be known for your actions? Justice. We're about halfway there. This is a longer video than usual because, of course, with the pips, there was only 10 of them, whereas with these, there's twice as many. All right. Now we have the Hanged Man. There's a lot of debate about how this card came to be in history. Was it just a misprint? Upside down. Here's my version. What really struck me and my co-writer Jessica, as we were doing the research on these cards, our sort of first round of deep knowing, was that it's not just a person hanging from their ankle. This card speaks to the cyclic myth of the dying and reborn God. So whether it is Jesus, whether it is Osiris, whether it is, here we see Odin hanging upside down by his ankle. He went and spent many days hanging from the yew tree in order to get the benefit of written language, in order to give it to humans, to help elevate our understanding and our intellect from just primal knowing to intuition that is also fueled by the workings of logic and the mind and language. Everything about this speaks to that notion of sacrifice, meaningful sacrifice, you might say. So when this card comes up, typically in a reading, it speaks to either literally you're all hung up, something is sort of in a state of suspension, or you are standing at a place looking ahead to needing to make a meaningful sacrifice for long-term gain. So again, that could be, doing the underpaid internship so that you can get the long-term benefit on your resume. It can be, it's any kind of thing where you're looking at something that feels like a challenge or hardship in the short term, but is meaningful in the long term. It's everything about parenting, which is, sacrifice now in the belief that it's going to all have been worth it. The cautionary note, sort of the gift and shadow that is in every card. If the gift of this card is that notion of long-term gain, the shadow is be aware of martyrdom for its own sake. Like, but I did everything for you. You owe it to me to meet my unarticulated needs. This card definitely encourages you to ask yourself what kind of situation or relationship you're getting into before you throw yourself all the way into it. Speaking of which, death. By the way, again, this is the Rider-Waite deck, also known as the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And if you want to Google it up right now, I highly recommend that you look at the gummy bear version of this card. It is this same card redrawn with gummy bears. There's nothing, you think this guy is scary? The scariest thing ever is a gummy bear with teeth. So funny. So this card, the death card. Boom. Let's go back to this one for a second. So you can see in here, we see sort of a papal figure. There's a king. There's crowns on the ground. What this card is supposed to speak to is rarely physical death. It is the radical transformation of a situation. It is the end of the old thing. It is the breakup that should have happened. It is the getting laid off that you needed to have happened for your own good ages ago. So it is some sort of traumatic break with the past. And the reason that there's like kings and popes and so forth in that version was to show that these things happen to everyone. You know, status, rank, money, beauty, popularity, none of these things protect us from the big changes in life. My version, I really wanted to move away from that image into something that I felt better expressed the benevolent aftermath of the painful change. So here we see, here's the figure on the funeral pyre, surrounded by the grieving in all of their stages of grief and denial. And nobody sees the phoenix. Something positive is coming out of this as that figure is released. And those of you who know me may know this is actually an image of my friend who was one of my besties when I was a kid growing up. He was a victim of one of the first campus shootings in America. And realizing that even in a place of pastoral charm and privilege such as that which I had growing up, that such an unbelievable tragedy could affect us there. Changed me and everyone of my generation forever. So here's that hope of positive transformation. That is the death card. Okay. By the way, part of my goal for this quarantine is to work on my troll hair, my like troll doll. So I keep fiddling with my hair because I'm excited that it's getting big. All right. And here we have the Temperance card. Sometimes this card is known as art in some of these. Some of the decks, and here it is. It's an angel figure. There's the rainbow. Everything about it is an iris, and there's a lot of pouring. There's a lot of sloshing going on. So this is the card of Temperance. It's the card of compromise. So it's a matter of finding again a livable balance. See those irises are traditional. I love this card. So compromise in this case means how much can you give in return for what you need? How much can you compromise before you are compromised? So it is the artfulness of the livable balance. And I don't know if it is or isn't, but it should be the card of bartenders and baristas also. Finding that perfect mix. And now we find the Devil card. Look at that. So there's once again, we see the figures that were in the Lovers card, slightly transformed. And here they are living their best / worst lives at the feet of a rather portly devil. Here's my version, a little bit different, but it's the same thing. This is the card of addiction, obsession, compulsion, denial. It is the card of rebelling against authority to a fault, and like authority issues that hurt you more than they hurt authority, I guess. This card, it's the too much Christmas card. So it is whatever it is that you're doing. When this comes up, it means you're doing too much of it. It's there's letting off a little steam, and then there's never getting anything done because you are rolling in decadence. So typically when it comes up, it's speaking to some sort of something in your life that is out of control. Every once in a while, it will come up, and because it's sort of a shocking image, somebody will say, I have no idea what that's about, which is hilarious because it is, of course, the card of denial. So that person is possibly, very possibly, in some sort of a relationship imbalance, in some form of addiction, alcoholism or drugs, or workaholic or something. So this card speaks to overdoing it. It was important to me in making this card to make it look a little bit more sexy and compelling, because nobody runs directly at addiction thinking, I can't wait to have my life fall apart and have my teeth fall out. Most folks get lured into imbalance because of the more attractive aspects of festivity or a cessation of pain or, the validation of a community and so forth. So the Devil card, love that card. It's one of those cards that helps you by being very clear in a reading. Okay, we're in the home stretch, maybe 8 more to go, something like that. Here we have the Tower card, sometimes known as the Lightning Struck Tower. You can see figures falling out, the crown is being blown off the building, the Lightning Struck Tower. Here's my version. Same thing, but this time you are the one being struck, so it is from your vista, vantage point. This tower comes up to suggest a radical and fundamental change of perspective. Something that you thought was true is not true. Something that you thought was under control is not under control. It is about you're coming from that great height to the ground. It is a radical change of perspective. And when this card comes up, when it comes up in a reading for someone else, you as a reader have to do a certain amount of spin to make sure that the person who is getting this card isn't overwhelmed by its gravity. That's a bit of a play on words, but you have to spin this in a way that they can understand that it's really serious and they're going to really experience it, but not be crippled in anticipation of whatever it means. I did a corporate gig maybe a month and a half ago, and this card came up over and over. I was at an event for bankers, and I was like, what is this even about? They were all getting this card. I'm going to say that maybe it had to do with this economic downturn that the whole planet is looking at right now. So when the Tower comes up for one person, help them receive the information without terror. When it comes up for a lot of people, make a note of the fact that you may be entering into an era where the symbolism of the Tower, as there's something that we don't know, may play out in a way that's worthy of note. Speaking of, let's look at the Star. This is a card of healing, insight, sort of visionary potential. So let's say that having gone through death and the Devil and the Tower card, at this point we are ready for our Fool, who has experienced so much hardship, gets to the Star card and goes, okay, perhaps I can reinvent myself. Perhaps it's not all over. Again, a very juicy card. A lot of times it comes up in relation to Aquarius for people who are into that sort of thing. And it is very much, again, about healing and vision. Perhaps I can say creating a new vision of who and what you might do. Having had that blast of insight, now it's time to do the deep, dark, dirty work of the Moon card. Here we have a creature rising from the depths. It represents messages from your deep mind, your intuition, your dreams, coming to reckon with unseen aspects of your past and personality. And then the wolf and the dog, respectively, speak to sort of our wild and domesticated natures. Here's my version. I love the Moon. When it comes up, it does suggest not only intuition, but mystery. There are things here that you don't see clearly. You may have to use not just your logic brain, but imagine opening up to where you can sort of use your intuitive or spiritual peripheral vision in order to be able to pick up the things in the edges so you can really start to understand what's going on in your personal landscape. Having gone through that, now you've done the work. You come out at the Sun card. Ta-da! Child on horse, celebration, sunflowers, everything about this card is joyful, and it is really a card of benediction and victory. So when it comes up, it suggests that everything is going great. If you have the first edition of the World Spirit Tarot, this card is terrible. So when I made a second version, it is much improved. The first one, it was my first attempt at illustrating a baby. I hadn't really been around babies, and it just looks like it's a little strange. It's a changeling looking thing. So here's the new edition version, which I'm much happier with. Here we see the sun. Everything about it says, ta-da! It is magic, it is joy, it is celebration. This is a great card. Benediction and the symbolism of the sun after the stars and the moon and the tower and all these things. It's very much that the light can touch everything. Everything in your life can be known, seen, enjoyed. Now we come to the Judgment card. One of my least favorite pieces of art in Pamela Coleman Smith's deck, the Judgment card. It's very much, yes, those are zombies rising out of their grave. There's some very funny stories about the misprintings of this card. So if you like that sort of thing, dig in and read a little bit about the Judgment card. What it means in a reading, however, for you, I always think of it as two things. It is how, if you were to die tomorrow, and may you not, how would you like people to speak of you? So there's that aspect of judgment in the sense of like, who are you in your community? Who are you in your family? Who are you to the people around you? So judgment in the sense of like, how shall ye be known? And then, all these people have died and of their various things and are being called back to life, in this case, by the summoning of their angel. In this case, in my choice of representation instead, it's less a resurrection of being brought back from the dead, and it's more about being evaluated, against the feather of truth. So, having gone through all the things that the fool goes through in the journey, now we come to the judgment part where the fool says, how did that work out? What kind of person have I learned to be? And how do I coexist with others and the world? So the judgment card, resurrection, reevaluation, replenishment, and moving on. And here's our very last card. Going as fast as we can, because this is a lot of material. You could honestly spend a whole session on each one of these cards, getting to really, really know it. But this is the speed reading version. Here is the world, sometimes known as the universe or the eon. It is typically this figure. We see these representations of the saints in the corners, who also are here to represent earth, air, fire, and water. Here's my version again. I wanted it to be a little bit more representative, a little bit more diverse. So we see here with the world, or the universe, or the eon, depending how she's called, this card speaks to coming to closure of a cycle. So here the fool has done this whole journey, come all the way around, learned about others, learned about self, learned about conflict, learned about addiction, change, transformation, virtue, accomplishment, reevaluation, comes all the way around to the world and says, I got this. I've completed a full cycle. I have learned all the things, and I have attained the mastery that the magician suggested. Now I'm free to do the dance, the cosmic dance. So when this card comes up, there's a sense of sort of closure or completion. I would say right after that would come the next Fool card. It's as if it was a spiral. If the Fool were here, Magician and Priestess and Empress, and they spiral up in almost like a DNA spiral, you would come all the way around and through a number of iterations of life experience. Here's that World card, and the next spiral begins. You step off and say, I am master of these things, but I am a novice at these things, and begin the whole next cycle. So the World card speaks to closure. That sums up the world's fastest walk through the major arcana. Again, every one of them asks you to give it a lot of personal study. Guided visualization is a really good way to get to learn more about them. Reading everything that anyone has written about them also helps, but you want to get a nice mix between the symbolism and the metaphors that you see and interpret based on your own experience and inner landscape, and what the scholars, writers, and artists have to say about it. Because, they're connected with this tradition, which has come to us, evolving over hundreds and hundreds of years. This is the part where you bring your personal aptitude to it, your intuition or your psychism or whatever you want to call it. So trying to find a melding of those two sets of skills will make you a better reader and a greater lover of the cards. The last thing I think I'm going to say about this right now, because I wanted to keep this video under 45 minutes, is that in various decks, if you get a whole bunch of different tarot decks that are all basically traditional, you will see huge variation in the art style. You may even see variation of a couple of the cards got moved around by various metaphysical thinkers during time. You can get deep in the weeds about that if you want to. Get to know the cards as individuals. Really spend some time with them. Find images that speak to you. I would suggest trying to find art that gives you, again, both the light aspect and the shadow aspect. And it's not overly Pollyanna, that is not overly dark, because the cards are a tool that need to be able to reflect the full expanse of human experience in order to really do their job, offering you a window into knowing more about yourself, the world, and others. As a person who's reading for others, you want to always be able to work with the cards and be able to find something that they can do, a person can do, you're queered, for hope. Even if it is a very difficult reading, even if they're in a very difficult or dark time in your life. If you got a reading that was nothing but, death and the devil and the Tower card, you want to be able to authentically speak to those, giving them a light that leads them through those to hope of a positive outcome, because it is it is your ethical burden to be able to always paint an out for somebody. Nothing is predetermined. Nothing is written. When you do a reading for someone, what you are doing is telling them, based on your experience, based on the way society is, based on how you've lived your life up to now, this is the likely outcome. If they don't like the outcome, often they have the power to change it. And they may be coming to you, not just saying, tell me what's going to happen, but they're saying, tell me how I can find an outcome I can live with. So you are trying to give them a magic piece of chalk where they can draw a door to step through in order to create a better sort of future for themselves or those that they're asking about. The other thing I want to say is that when you do a reading, if you pulled 5 cards or 8 cards or 10 cards in a reading, if there is a preponderance of major arcana, that's a lot. That says a lot about where the person that you're reading for is in their life journey. So you want to walk them through and talk them through all those cards, and you can let them know that if they're feeling overwhelmed, either with the good or the bad of what's happening, that they are experiencing a lot with those major arcana. The major secrets, the major arcana, are the big life lessons. If the minor arcana, that ace through 10, if those cards, your ace of 10 of wands, ace of tons of swords, those cards are like your daily, they're your daily to-do list, your grocery list. Those are the ones that are more about like how you cope with things in real time. These cards, in general, tend to speak to big aspects of your life. It's almost like, I think of it as if we were all floating on the water. There's like little waves that we navigate, as we go through the minor cards. But when the major cards, you're just riding up the side of a gigantic wave. It's not so much about what you do as how you affect how you feel about it, if that makes sense. So again, you're always trying to find empowering language for people, even when confronted with difficulty. And you do want to notice if there's a preponderance of anything, even if it's all major cards. And you went, wow, these are every card that you pulled is a woman, or every card that you pulled, weirdly, is looking off to the left-hand side. Or there sure are a lot of cats, dogs, and snakes in your reading. These little details of symbolism are really important for you to lean into and develop a relationship with symbolically. I think that's what I have to say about that. I hope that it has been helpful for you. I hope you've enjoyed this time. My plan is to share this video with everyone online tonight and take your comments about it. I will be with you and I will answer them in real time. Again, this is me. I'm Madame Onça of the World Spirit Tarot. This is my fancy dancy sign, which is backwards. Future of Tradition at gmail.com, and my partner's Venmo, PAOLOGARBANZO. My name's Madame Onça. It's been my pleasure. I hope this workaround helps us with the stuttering of technology in this age of additional hunger for bandwidth. I mean, literally everyone is trying to be online at the same time, and the internet just can't keep up. So I'm hoping pre-recording will help. I think that's it. Blessed be.